Book six here we jump to lines 450 through 476. Shade of Dido. Obviously, there's a lot of things that happened if we're talking about the Shade of Dido here. Um, the events that follow after Aeneas's argument with Dido, of course, are his departure, and in her grief, Dido does take her life. The events of Book Five follow after, which are largely just a Olympic type funeral games for in honor of Aeneas's recently deceased father Anchises. Um, at the end of Book Five, the Trojans all leave Sicily, where the games are held, and make their way for the mainland of Italy, where they land at Cumae. They meet up with the Sibyl, who is a prophetess of Apollo. She takes them down to the underworld as a guide, very similar to Dante's Inferno here, with Virgil being the guide in that one. But anyway, brings them down as the guide to locate Aeneas's deceased father, who's supposed to assist them in figuring out where in Italy they're supposed to be by fate. Um, However, along the way here, yes, we are going to bump into some familiar faces, Dido amongst them. So Dido here is discovered in the grove of, I believe it's of heartbroken women. So here, starting off, among these women, Phoenician Dido reckons vulnere, so fresh from her wound, Dido Ereban, she was wandering. Silva and Magna, the Romans like to wrap nouns and adjectives around a prepositional phrase. So she was wandering in the large wood. She, or rather her, right? It's the accusative form. Her, the Trojan hero, she stood next to. So he stood next to her at first, and he recognized, I guess, quam again, her obscure or hidden by or through the shades. Just as, so a simile here, comparing Dido's shade to the moon, just as the moon, just as one at the beginning, primo mense, out of time, at the beginning of the month, one either sees or putat vidisse thinks to have seen the moon. Surgere thinks you see the moon rising per nubila through the clouds. So returning back to the story, here Aeneas, he sends down tears upon seeing Dido. Timesis here, the splitting of this verb ad fatus est by amore. So he addresses maybe her, and he addresses her with sweet affection. So Aeneas says to Dido, wretched Dido, therefore, verus nuntius, a true message to me, venerat had come. Indirect speech that maybe te implied here, referring to Dido, since these are feminine, that you had passed, that you had died, and secutam you had pursued extrema your death, ferro by the sword or by iron. Alas, heyu, fui, was I the cause, tui Phaneris of your death, or tibi Phaneris, your death? Persidera, through the stars or by the stars, I swear, by the gods above, and if qua here, again, Ali with the if any, and if any faith or trust, if there is any of that stuff, est, to lure sub ima in the lands below. Invitus, unwillingly queen. So invitus is masculine because it's referring back to Aeneas. Unwillingly queen, I departed to ode litore, again, more rapping, from your shore, from your beach. But Yusa, the commands de orum of the gods, the commands which now, Kogant here is to compel, which compel me now to go through these shades, and the may there is brought over, which compel me to go through these shades, through these decaying these places, I guess like full of C2, full of decay, and through noctem profundum, through this vast darkness, this vast night. Um, the commands also egerant, they also force or drive, again, they drive me with their power. Nor Kiwi here is kiwi is the same meaning as potui, possum form here. So nor am I able, credere, to believe, and then we throw into indirect speech to believe that I, Dolorem, that or fere, I brought hung tantum Dolorem, such great grief tibi to you, discesu supine form here by means of my departure. Siste gradum, so stop your step. Where he's, yeah, I have to imagine she's maybe hearing what he's saying. I think she's trying to ignore him as much. She's very, very upset, fed up with him, wants nothing to do with him. So imagine that him speaking here, she starts floating away from him. So he says, "Stop your step," and so ne subtrahe, don't withdraw te yourself, spectu nostro, from my sight. Quem fugus harkens back to mene fugus from Dido's speech earlier. So whom are you fleeing? From whom are you fleeing? And then he says, ad locor est, est hoc extremum. So this is extremum. This is essentially the last time, fato, by fate, last time quad which ad locor I speak te, or I address you. So he's saying this is the last time we'll ever talk. But nevertheless, Aeneas here, he was warding, he was, isn't this warding off, I think? Well, that's warding off here. He was warding off with such words, or maybe even addressing with such words. Dido here is the implied direct object. Dido burning because she's very angry, and her Torva here is like angrily or wrathfully watching. He was trying, I guess, trying to soothe. That's what this word is. He was trying to soothe her spirit, her burning spirit, and her spirit watching angrily, and he was warding off tears. She, though, Illa, Dido, she held herself turned. Well, I guess she turned, held her eyes fixed on the ground. No more movator is she moved, passive. Is she moved by is I guess her is she moved as to her face, right? This is accusative of respect. No more moved in her face is she by his undertaken conversation. So no more moved, yeah. Than if, so comparison here, than if I guess she stood as, and these are nominative because they're referring back to Dido, the subject. Then if she stood as a sharp rock or sharp flint, harsh flint, or stood as the Marpesian cliffs. Those are the cliffs on Paros where they get the marble. Finally, I think this is Dido here. She took up herself, she snatched up herself, and hostilely she fled away from him into the shadowy grove where her Pristinus, her former husband, so this is Zacchaeus, yep, Zacchaeus. In the next line, her former husband Zacchaeus responded illy to her. This is the date of Layla, so responded to her, to that woman, responded to her and with care, with cares, with concerns, and he, Zacchaeus, equalized or just matched. He matches amorem, her affection. So he returns her affection essentially. Nevertheless, nevertheless, Aeneas here, struck by the ininiquo casu, by the unfortunate mishap here, the unfortunate misfortune, he he pursues for a while, at a distance, lacrimis, with tears, and he pities maybe Dido, Didonem here. He pities Dido, Eontem, departing or leaving.